What's going on? Welcome to the Creator Factor podcast, where we talk about the art of content marketing, entrepreneurship, and of course, community for our fellow content creators. And if you don't know, now you know, because I am your host who loves you the most, Ozeal. And today's guest, ladies and gents, is a multilingual, award-winning podcast marketer with over 10 years plus of experience in the podcasting game. She's been podcasting and helping clients all over the world. She's the host of the podcast space and strategically aligned it with her business, thepodcastspace.com, where she helps entrepreneurs launch and grow their podcast for business growth. I'm going to dive right in because I'm excited to speak to a friend of mine. Ladies and gents, Creator Factor fam, let's welcome to the show none other than my friend Ana Xavier in the building. Ana, how you feeling today?
Ozeal, thank you for that intro. I feel so pumped to be here. Oh my gosh, and special. I'm like, oh yes, pour on that love.
Let's go. You feeling the vibes? Let's just do a dance right here.
Feeling the vibes.
Let's get it. Let's feel the vibe. Hey,
we don't need music.
We don't need music. We'll add that music later. We got it. Well, listen, I'm excited. You and I connected through a mutual friend. I want to say a few months back. We were able to connect online, had a chat, and I was really just excited. And for one, because you are a podcast marketer, you're very passionate about the podcasting space, and you also run a business as a consultant, and you're also a fellow Texan. Right down, we're neighbors here here in Texas. So I'm excited to kind of dig in. Curious, because I know you are originally from Portugal. Now you've been to Portugal. You lived in the UK. From the UK, you relocated to Texas, now living in Dallas. What's the transition like been? Because I know European life is different from the US, and then let alone Texas, because Texas, as you know, it's already its own country. So how's that transition been so far? How you liking Texas?
I mean, it's been about 8 years now. So I'd definitely say it's been the beginning, actually, not to get too deep right away, but it was actually really difficult because I moved from London, where it's a city that you can hop on public transport and you have full independence and you can do whatever. And I don't like driving. I love walking. And it was a little tough because I moved here because came with my husband, and so basically he was moved for a job and I didn't have something, so I had to apply for work authorization, and it was a huge step for me. Texans are so lovely. I was so happy in that sense, but it was definitely an adaptation because it's building a network from scratch. It's building a life from scratch, and as you said, completely different. So it took some adapting, but I mean, we've built friends. I love living in Dallas. It's amazing.
The transportation is completely different from Europe. Over here, it's if you don't have a vehicle, then you can't get nowhere in Texas.
I'll
and then
say
number two,
this,
go ahead.
Though, the first 2 years of living in Dallas, I actually did not have a car, and I got into the buses. I would walk. I would carpool.
Dallas is better. Dallas is much better than Houston.
Fair.
Yeah. Dallas is better as far as transportation wise, for sure, over Houston. But yeah, because their transportation is on point. And then, of course, the heat, right? Oh
my gosh.
You guys don't get that. Texas heat is a whole different game. If you guys have lived in Texas or been to Texas, you know what I'm talking about. It's brutal. Let's start here, Ana. Every superhero has an origin story. And I'm curious. I know you have a background in journalism, and that took you down different routes, and obviously it makes total sense that you went down the podcasting space, since I do feel like podcasting is audio journalism to a certain point. Raw and uncut. It's different, but it's still journalism, y'all. Curious to know your origin story. When was the first time you discovered okay, I'm creative, I think and operate differently from everybody else? Talk to us about that.
I think since I'm a twin and I have a sister that is fraternal, we're very different. She took a very kind of academic route. So, she always loved teaching and all of that. And she's neurotypical. I'm all over the place, super, squirrel brain. So I think that I realized that we were very different from the get-go. And I was always very chatty, always wanted to be surrounded by people, but not oh, look at me, as to connect with people.
Right.
And my mom is also very creative. So I feel we were always drawing or making crafts and stuff like that. So I think, it was an easy transition, but it was really funny because I always share this story because I think it's super important. So when I was doing my internship in a radio station in college, my mentor was like, Anna, I know you're doing this internship for journalism, but I think you have too much energy and you're really bright. You have a lot of personality, and I don't think it's going to work as a journalist. How about you think about cartoons, voiceovers, or, being a radio DJ? And I was like, oh my God, it's when someone like that, and he's such an amazing professional. So I took it as advice from, the sage. And I really took that on because I thought, he really cares about, the people who he mentors. And I was like, he saw right through me, and I was like, makes sense. So that's exactly what I did. I went to do a radio host in my hometown, and I was like, how did anyone give this 21-year-old the afternoon's show? What? So,
yeah, the talent apparently.
I mean,
right?
I think also I have a high work ethic, so they basically recognize and acknowledge that I would not mess up, into the level that they were everyone else at my age would. So they really trusted it, and I tested so many things, and so that was really cool. So that's the inception. I think early on I knew I was quirky and creative and talkative and whatever, but that was my defining moment of let's lean into the weird professionally, because that's okay.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting. I like to ask that question for creators because I feel like we could all, if we reflect back, we could all pinpoint that moment when we discover. For me, it was definitely performance. I was a performer. I was a break dancer early on. So
I heard that on the previous episode.
Yeah, that was my form. That was my form of creative expression, and that went back when I was a kid growing up. So I feel like those moments for creatives, because we operate and think differently, and we partake in different activities that other people may not. We're not really interested in the academia, but we're excited and obsessed with expression, whether it's through writing or performance or, and you name it, right? Drawing, being an artist. So I love asking that question because I feel like everybody can go back and be like, hey, that's where I really discovered early on. And some people even go back and answer that question, be like, yeah, I remember back when I was 6 or 7.
Oh,
it's crazy, but I love that question. Okay. So let's talk about, because you have over a decade, of experience in the podcasting space. And I'm geeking out about this because I am very passionate. I've been in the podcasting space for 10 years plus as well, early on. And I've seen the market change drastically from just podcasting and just for creators from an indie standpoint, but also from a marketing standpoint, from a monetization standpoint. So specifically about podcast marketing, what have you seen significantly change over the years observing these podcast marketing strategies since when you first started?
Yeah, so I just want to make a caveat because I think it's important to think about this. So one thing that I appreciate about the podcast industry is how diverse everybody is and how you can bring in your expertise into it. And I would say a lot of my marketing experience comes from working in the nonprofit world, in the communications department. And so really understanding how you cannot have a communications plan for anything and just be a silo. It really needs to be, incorporated in everything that you do in your business. And my kind of experience in the nonprofit world taught me that even before I started working with business owners that, unless you have a really big budget, you got to get creative with how you market. And so there's no right or wrong or no one way to market a podcast. And that's what is really cool about my experience is that even before starting with working with business owners here in the US and live streaming, we have to think about how, one, our skill set is unique and we also need to maximize it, but also how what may work for some business owner may not work for someone else. So there's people who I think it's just so fascinating to me how someone can really leverage SEO, right? And can say, hey, I have a podcast that is based on my website and all of my traffic comes through SEO. And someone else go, I have a very, very engaged social media audience, and I have like someone else say my email list is insane. So I think that the more we go into, the maturity of podcasting is really understanding that there's not one way. And what used to happen before was, you had either the journalists, right? And they relied on a huge machine to make things work. And then you had the hobbyists that were like very, very niche, that they were really into podcasting. That's like really the origin story of how to market a podcast. You create a community and they have like all of these like elements around it. And I would say probably what has been really exciting to see within the marketing world and connecting to podcasting is really understanding that the industry is growing and marketing and just basically every single big player is paying attention. So the opportunities are there. Brands are realizing that either by brand association with podcasters or really creating podcasts, there's just so much to leverage. Whereas before, maybe it was really, really hard and very limiting, because I remember clients coming to me and saying, hey, we have these bank and we're going to charge them like $500 to have a seat on the podcast and like to share their story, and we'll like sit down and do all of the things. And like today it's, for most people have a podcast. So it's, unless you have that like unique leverage, like for most people to say like, oh yeah, we're going to charge you $500 to have you on this show, people go, what? Like, no, like I'm going to do it for free. So I think that it has opened a lot of opportunities. And then again, let's not even talk about the tools, right? Like what we do today with what we can do today. I remember when I was working as a podcast broadcaster and a producer in a studio, and we would have someone say, okay, I want to be on a green screen, and we have to shoot it, we'd have to chroma key it, and we have to like export and edit all these things. And now you pull your phone and you can just say, hey, add this filter that is green, and you can talk over stuff. So that's definitely something that I think like not enough people understand, how much easier it is to leverage different tools and how technology has evolved to a point where you can create better marketing with so many different budgets. I think I went like in a lot of points, but
no, you definitely tapped on a lot of things. You got me thinking. Before I do a follow up on the marketing comment, I want to touch on something, because you said leveraging podcast and maximizing that content. A lot of, whether it's guesting, excuse me, and all the other forms that we're seeing. Content marketing strategies being built on podcasting. What do you say to, let's say, the business owner who says, what's the ROI in podcasting? Because as a consultant, I'm sure you can relate to this. I still feel like we're still, as consultants who are passionate about this space, are still jumping through hurdles and playing the convincing game on just convincing people, like our business owners specifically, there is an ROI to this, and then quantifying that. Like, what do you say to the business owners? Like, how is this going to really grow my business? And for any creatives out there who are doubting the leverage that podcasting can give them.
Yes, that's an excellent question. And so I always say, and this was like such a great conversation we had with a few creators a few months ago, which is, if you're a business owner and you don't have your business figured out, a podcast is going to have zero ROI for you. You're just literally going to spin your wheels, because there's so much about the strategy, right? Like, it's not just thinking about having a name and slapping a cover art and getting it out. Is, what do you talk about? What type of guests do you have? What do you do with those guests? Are those like dream guests? Are these people who are going to be your ideal customer? Are you selling to the audience? Like, what is this? Do you need to have, like, for instance, let's say, you need to have content on your website, but you get analysis paralysis in writing and you can talk, right? So there's so many opportunities to have ROI, but if you don't know what you're doing with your business, and if you don't know what you want to get out of the podcast, the ROI is going to be negative. So definitely starting there. I'd say once you have that figured out, the second step is understanding what is the goal with the show. And when you tie in the goal with the show and say, do I need immediate goals to be achieved? Is this medium term? Is this long term? Because, for instance, when I started my podcast last year, I knew that the majority of the results, I was not going to see them within like at least a year and a half. And I experimented a lot. Like one of my goals, for instance, as a podcast marketing expert and someone who looks at data and analytics, I wanted to have that basically like absolutely 100% control over every single step of the process, because as consultants, we don't get a clear vision of what the client does. So even though we say, hey, like, this is what I work with a client, this is what happened, there's always that element that is like, it's not necessarily unethical, but like you don't really know to the point what the client did and if that was a result of the podcast or not. You know what you do, but that was one of the things that I did. And so really understanding like you can have an ROI that is immediate if you sit down with a person that is in front of you and you go, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to talk to you, great, la la la. You have the interview and then you bond and you go, hey, I have this type of service. I know that your business needs it, but like, for instance, like sorting out who needs to be the guest in order to make that deal, in order to have an immediate ROI is incredibly important. Or then let's say your long-term impact is, for instance, being a speaker at events and having a podcast is like a proof of concept, getting yourself more comfortable, expanding on your knowledge, expanding on your, just getting the reps in, right? Like practicing as much as you can. So there's so many different ROIs that I think understanding like right away, like what is it that you want with this podcast and how soon do you want it? Because if you have a plan to have an ROI that is immediate, you can't just say, I'll just get 5 episodes and I'll get there, right? Like it's, what do you want? What are the different plans to get there? Because I'm sure you see that all the time when someone says, I want 10,000 downloads, and you go, okay, what are those 10,000 downloads for, right? Is this just for vanity metrics? Is this to leverage that for an opportunity with a sponsorship? Is this to perhaps like later down the line, like write a book and then you have like basically an engaged audience on a podcast? Like, what is this, right? Like, I feel like that's also helping the business owner get clarity on what is it that they want. And a lot of times demystify really misconceptions, because people think a podcast is a great way to grow an audience. No, a podcast is a great opportunity to nurture an audience. And you guest to get an audience, guest on other people's podcasts.
I love it. You touched on a lot of things, and I'm glad that you mentioned, the download numbers. I do see a blog post in my mind I've been thinking about writing. It's like death by downloads, because I feel like a lot of businesses quantify the success of the podcast to a download number, where it's an empty vanity metric, as you and I know in this space. And if you don't know, if you're not really clear with the objective that that download number or the worth of that download number, it's pointless to say, hey, I need 10K or up or bust. We're done. This is not worth it. So I think I'm glad that you touched on that, because I think a lot of business owners and new creators that are getting into the space, trying to determine whether or not a podcast is great for their brand or business, unfortunately get caught up too much on the numbers rather than the true essence of what it is and what it could really bring from a long-term play. As we know, it's a long game, right?
And size of the market, really, because so many people say 10,000, let's say I want to hit 1 million downloads. Well, let's say if you have a business that is catering to like a very specific type of, like, let's say like someone that has trucks, or like if you serve an audience that is not very big, like that is just not, you're not going to hit it unless like maybe like 20 years down the road or something, right? Because just the product itself is not marketable to a generic audience. So like sometimes it's just like even understanding that for some people that's not even possible, period, right? Unless you buy bots, and that's a whole unethical conversation, and it does nothing for you. But
a lot of that going on, unfortunately. So let's talk about marketing, Ana, because for our listeners and people who are watching on YouTube, for somebody who's, and I get it, I completely agree, because it's not a one size fit all marketing plan. All the tactics are different depending on what's aligned with the strategy. And of course, depending on industries, it changes. But for like, let's say your typical creator who's building brand online and they were launching a podcast, what are some things, like some common mistakes you see a lot of podcasters make? And what are some tactics that you see that are proven that are effective in marketing your podcast brand? What's working right now in 2024?
Well, let's say video.
Okay.
Video, however you can do the video. Why? Because I literally just had this conversation with someone else, and I'm like, I had this comment I made this comment to 3 different people, and none of them said like, oh no, that's been going on for a while. So Google now is indexing, so it's pulling search results on shorts. So basically, if you Google whatever, you're going to be served like the blogs, the long form content, or the videos that are like long form on YouTube, but also short form. So basically, if you're doing really good SEO, which is like number 2, really be descriptive about what you're doing. And so instead of saying, like podcast episode with Ana Xavier, it's like how to better market your podcast as a business owner with podcast marketing expert Ana Xavier, right? So really be kind of intentional about the keywords you're incorporating, and then really help people think about the user experience and navigation. So something that I see is working really well as well is the chapters. So chapters, time codes. So when are you talking about something important, include what time that started happening, because not only YouTube includes that, but also Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So you can add chapters and people can navigate through the episode. So not only for organic discoverability, but also thinking about how your listener can replay specific parts of the conversation when you're trying to tell them like, hey, I'm an expert in this area. And so sometimes we kind of like think about like, oh, let me do the bare minimum. But if you are a creator who's like, well, I can't do all of that, that sounds like a lot, to go back and think of like, oh, when are my important timestamps? Like really use AI. That's my 3rd tip. Like there are so many tools right now. For instance, I use Descript, and Descript not only I can record there if I want to. I don't, because I record on QuickTime Player, the OG QuickTime Player. So I record, I edit. It gives me the transcription file. It gives me timestamps. It gives me show notes, especially if you write your episodes in the way that I do, which is you start with a teaser, you then go immediately into the topic, and then you close the show. That really helps AI understand prioritize what is most important about the show, instead of like trying to figure out like what's the angle. You're literally telling it what it is. So in terms of making sure that in terms of SEO, your show notes are thorough. Don't like slap the whole like transcript, but really incorporate those things, like not only like natural language. I'm giving so much. So basically, like natural language is how you talk.
You're giving us a tea right now, Anna.
I know. Yeah.
Well, before we get into the tools, AI tools, 'cause I definitely want to talk about AI and how you're leveraging those tools, because it's fascinating to me, and definitely making our lives easier as creators. Let's touch on, you mentioned about marketing. We talked about video, and I agree with you. I think video is a major player for podcasters now and moving forward. I think it's always been, but I feel like now more than ever, because of everything that's changing with YouTube playing in our sandbox and Google. And so agree, video for sure. Anything else regarding like social media, anything that an indie creator could do, a podcaster could do to really maximize their reach organically? Like what's working right now in addition to video?
So organic marketing and being authentic and being real. Authentic was a word of the year last year for a reason. Stop pretending that you're a multimillionaire. Stop pretending that you're a big shot. Talk to people like you're a normal person. Yeah. Build a brand that is relatable. If you look, and this is just so easy. Like I look at all all the time, what are the big players doing? Not what they're saying, but what does their marketing look like? And if every single person moved away, unless like they're like a specific type of creator, but most people moved away from showing their jets, their big cars, all of those things that are like showy, because again, look at the economy where we are. Everybody is trying to show that they're, you know, I'm just your bestie. Come check my house in a very like cool way. We're in the couch hanging out. Whereas then before, a podcast would be like, hi, I'm Ana Xavier, and in this podcast episode, I'm going to be covering blah, 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 right? Like, and now it's like, no, we can talk
Is that
as
your
regular
podcasting
people.
voice, Ana? Is that your podcasting?
That is my radio
what
voice.
Just happened? That's your radio voice?
Yes. So, you know, you had like the corporate video, like something that was like you had to, and this is something that I coach clients all the time. Like, you are not doing a corporate video. You don't need to look, you know, air quotes, like professional. You need to be professional, but you don't need to be like a put together person that is so sounding so polished that you sound fake or you sound rehearsed. People want to connect to creators that they can resonate with. And so look around. If you, whoever you admire, start paying attention to how they're doing their marketing on showing up on social media. So it like those videos, if you spend too much time cutting a promo, grab your phone and talk directly to the camera and tell people like why they should listen to the show, right? Like that organic conversation. Like for instance, in your stories, you are very relaxed. You talk to the people. You have like an approach that feels like we are your friend. And so if it feels awkward to you, just think about like how you talk to your friends or how you talk to your colleagues and go from there. It's easier to sound like you than to pretend that you're someone else. So
wow, that's my drop. Beautiful. Well said. I will add, you know, one of the things that I've noticed, Ana, you know, we're in the creative space, so we are around a lot of content marketers, you know, creator educators, podcasters, etc. One of the things that I've noticed, because I like to look outside the circle, one of the things, and it goes back to what you were saying about being authentic. One of the things I've noticed about some celebrity, even like B-level, C-level celebrities are starting a podcast. One of the things that they do well, and I don't even like, I'm not a big fan of their podcast, but one thing that I see that's like, I see why people rave about them, is that they're very, it's not like they're putting on this, they're posturing like podcasters. They're simply people that are simply just having a conversation. And I notice like with podcasters, we often, and I get it, I think we all been down this route where we posture and we have to put this position like, you know, we're hey, welcome to the, you know, and I get it because those are like the beginnings of how we got started, and it was a bit off a riff off radio, and it was a bit of, you know, making sure that we play the part, and I get that part. But I've noticed that when celebrities do it, I like to just observe, and I've noticed that they do a better job of just relaxing and being themselves. And I'm like, I wish we need to kind of take some notes from them, because I see a lot of podcasters that are leaders and are influencers, but they're way too polished. And I'm like, bro, we gotta relax a little bit, y'all.
Yeah, I agree. And two things on there. So one, podcasters dethrone social media influencers as the most reliable people and trustworthy people in 2023. So basically, data shows us, and I think it was a study by Edison Research or something, they were talking about how, like podcasters moved up in the trustworthiness scale. So, you know, if anything, just know that, you know, bringing in your best self already connects to people and they already trust you. Also, people know it takes a lot of work, right, to put a 20-minute podcast episode versus like a 30-second video. The second, what you were saying is so true, right? Look at social media. The amount of people who, there's a French expression they were talking about, like air podcast. So basically it's like, it pretends like they're not having a podcast. This creator doesn't even have a podcast. But the format is so popular on social media that people even pretend that they're doing a show to have content, and they actually don't have a show, which, to be honest, to me, it's additional work. I'm like, why wouldn't you just have a podcast? So, you know, it is a format that is popular, so why wouldn't you jump on what is already working instead of guessing, I wonder how to grow my podcast. If only I knew. It's like, hello, video, in getting it real on social media.
Yeah, getting real. I love that. I'm glad that we're both in agreement with that, because shout out to all the podcasters. We got to get a little bit more. We got to relax a little bit, just unbutton a little bit, just be ourselves. And I think that's something that I would like to see a lot more in our specifically our podcasting space. AI. Let's talk about the big A word.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What's AI? AI seems to be like running amok, and I feel like there's new tools every day, Ana. It's kind of hard to keep up these days, and a lot of them are so freaking good. So I've been obsessed, just discovering a lot of these tools, and as I mentioned, it makes our lives easier as content creators. What are your thoughts with the rise of like AI? How are you personally integrating AI? I know you mentioned a little bit about how you use AI, but how are you integrating AI in your workflow process? And then what are kind of like the top 3 AI tools that you feel like every podcaster should have in their toolkit?
So I'm not necessarily like a gearhead or like a person who loves all the tools. So I like finding tools that like serve different types of clients, and just keeping an idea on those. But I'm never one who's like also like, ooh, what's the new thing? Test. My friend Mark Ronick and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Nick Balnack. Oh my God, Nick. Anyway, sorry, Nick, if you're listening to this. Oh my God, I butchered your last name. So they run a membership called Podcaster. Oh my gosh, what is wrong with me, Ozeal? I can't think of that. Oh my God, it's a name.
It's okay. It's a name. It's a name. We'll figure it out and we'll put it in the show notes.
Jeez.
It happens. All good.
So
Let's keep it real, Ana. Yeah. We're keeping it real, baby. We're keeping it real.
Oh my God. Yes. So they actually test a lot of tools. So
Yeah.
I would say actually don't
AI
try
tools?
to
AI
tools. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so basically they pick up all of the different tools because these two guys, like they have like a gazillion projects. It's insane. So I'm like, I can't recall. But so they do all of that. So think about this. Like, is there any creator already who's doing the research for you? So do that, right? Or ask around people who are doing it. But I would say to me, the rule of thumb is I'm using AI in all the things that I struggle with and that I don't like doing, or that I know that it's important to do, but that perhaps is really delaying me in a ton of like parts of podcasting. So
Okay.
as a multilingual, I always struggle with grammar. I accidentally start like using Portuguese grammar because it's different than the US one. Or, like I normally don't do a ton of like mistakes when I'm typing, especially like I use Grammarly. So that's like
Love
something-
Grammarly.
Oh my God, perfect,
Essential.
right?
Yeah.
That's another AI
it.
tool.
Yeah.
So basically like really looking into where do I like get stuck? Like writing show notes for me was awful.
Tedious. Yeah.
Oh my God,
Agreed.
so bad. But it's needed, right? And finding timestamps, those are like, again, stuff that really is important. Now, I don't do like AI generated images. That's more like from specific, like the branding perspective and standpoint logic on the aspect of when everything that you do is AI generated, you lose the edge of your personal branding.
Yeah.
Because people stop recognizing your brand. So it's not amazing on that sense. So be intentional. And the AI voices, whenever I have a trick. So basically whenever people use like the AI to create a script, they always, that first paragraph is always about like in the ever evolving world of whatever, just scrap that first paragraph. And it will go immediately into your voice. So remove that. But really like thinking about like where are you not doing things that you know are important and you're basically thinking like, oh, it takes me forever. Well, look for that one tool, right? Look for that one tool that is going to fix the problem so you can focus on the high level stuff. And the high level stuff, high impact, that is what is going to get you more listeners, what is going to get you more visibility, what is going to get you, to rank higher or to spend less time on these things that you absolutely need to have on your show. But you don't know, like maybe you don't know editing and you're spending too much time editing. So let's move into the 3 tools that I'm using that I recommend, I guess, unless you have like something to make as a side note on that.
Well, let's get down to as far as like specifically, like what tools are you using? ChatGPT, Cast Magic. I mean, what? Yeah, what? Because you mentioned Grammarly. What are the other ones that are using?
So
for
Descript for basically
Descript?
almost everything that is related to my podcast.
Okay.
And I use a few AI tools within Canva. People have no idea how
Yeah, Canva's-
amazing
yeah.
Canva is.
Yeah.
It can really do a ton. And I'm talking about like an Adobe Photoshop girly who like
Yeah.
used to have all the suite Illustrator, InDesign, all the things. Like
Yeah, some of the new
Canva is
features.
amazing.
I mean, it's just whoa. It's so much.
Animation, it's insane. And I
Video.
don't think people understand. Yeah, video, like you can actually have sound
Jeez.
effects and like all these things.
Yeah.
So I'd say, yeah, Canva. And then last but not least, I'm going to say probably, hang on, because I'm thinking about this third one because it's like really important. I use ChatGPT a lot, but it's more
Yeah.
for business. But it's funny because like there's people who love Gemini and people who love Claude AI. So I'd say, okay, let's keep these three: Canva, Descript, and ChatGPT.
ChatGPT are the ones. Okay, awesome. We'll make sure we link that up in the show notes. Have you ever used Cast Magic by any chance?
I think I've tried it before.
Yeah.
You like it?
I like it. I like the fact that it gives you the timestamps and it gives you a lot of social and it converts it into multiple pieces of content. So it does a great job of repurposing content. And again, to your discretion, I always say, creators, as we know, we talked about this. You gotta edit. You gotta add your own taste because coming out of the box, it's not always hot, but I do like the fact that it does give you timestamps and chapters and potential titles. And it's just basically like a Swiss Army knife for repurposing podcast content. So I do like it. I do like it. So yeah,
Can I ask you one thought? What your thoughts are on something?
bring it.
All right.
Bring it.
What are your thoughts on people who duplicate themselves to create an AI of themselves to do video?
I don't like it. Why? I don't like it. I feel like so. Hold on. Let's unfold it a little bit. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So maybe I reacted too quick. So you mean duplicating yourself to do a video?
So basically, yeah, like do a scan because there's technology can do this. Scan you, and you basically just write your script, and it creates an AI version of yourself. It's like a hologram of yourself almost.
Okay.
And you don't ever need to get on camera.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, as somebody who struggles to be on camera and do videos, I kind of like that idea now. So we'll say this. I like the idea. I do like it. And I don't know. I'm still going to fight for the human experience though, Ana.
Yes.
I do. I'm going to fight for that now that I'm thinking. I'm just, I feel like with AI, and I'll share a little bit because you got me on my soapbox. I love AI, and I believe it's a great assistant, and I believe that it's going to do a lot of things to make our lives easier, specifically as content creators and as entrepreneurs. However, I do feel like it's evolving so fast, and it's insane that you even mentioned that. The fact that I'm sure there's I didn't even know there was a tool that actually could do that, but it's evolving so fast that it's going to go that route faster than we think. And unfortunately, you're going to see people that are going to adopt it and rock it. But I just feel like it's important for us to be as real as possible. And I feel like that human experience, we have to hold on to that. And I'm all about making life more efficient and effective in different ways. But I still believe in this space where we still got to be people at the end of the day. Like, I feel like we can't let AI prevent us from doing the work that makes us human.
Yeah.
And I feel like with all the evolutions of modern technology, it makes life easier. It makes us move faster. But now it's like makes us think and do things quicker. But I do feel like the creator still has to be in charge of the ship. And I think if we completely just say, hey, let's go ahead and automate the steering wheel and you do this and it's still operated by me, I don't like that. I feel like we still need to keep both hands on the wheel and manage that as much as possible, because I think that's the beauty of the creative spirit. So those are my thoughts. How does that land?
Yeah, I kind of, for some reason, I thought that's what you're going to say. But something for the listener, really, or the
Yes.
viewer. There's about 8 different skills that you learn when you're podcasting. And we may be doing it for the art. I think podcasting is art at the end of the day. And sure, take away the parts that you don't enjoy it. But by removing those parts, are you removing the skills you could be learning? A ton of my clients get opportunities to actually produce podcasts for other people or to be hosts on the show and do script writing for these people, just simply because they have gotten the skills and they got really good at it. If you're taking AI on every step of the journey and you're not allowing yourself to learn and to suck at hosting, right? Like, it is an amazing tool. I, as a multilingual, I wanted to do public speaking, but I always felt a little like nervous about it because I felt like, oh, this is literally like one time I nearly fainted on stage because I had a freak out moment. It was really hot though in that place, but I was like, what if I forget the words in English? And I, like eventually picked it up and whatever, but like, if I had not done a weekly podcast episode for a year and a half, I would not be the confident speaker that I am on stage today. And so I did not think it would be possible for me to be this confident and just be so comfortable. But think about when you're creating a podcast, what are the possibilities for you as a creator, for you as a business owner, to make yourself be relatable to the listeners. And you don't need to cry and you don't need to share stuff that is going to be over the top. Like, just sharing the human experience and the journey and being honest about it is going to get you so much further than you ever thought. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Got deep. That's a whole episode, Ana. We could talk about it. Is really getting deeply into really the future of AI and what that means. Again, I'm a fan of AI. I think that's great, but yeah, human experience. This right here, nothing's gonna beat it. Nothing. So we can't lose this. All right, so let's talk about something you touched on earlier. I'm excited as a marketer. We have this love-hate relationship with data and analytics when it comes to podcasting, because as you know, it's still maturing and it's still hard to quantify metrics and analytics and put it in a spreadsheet and say this is successful and this is not. Curious to know, with data and analytics and metrics, what for our creators that are looking at the key metrics to measure, what would you say they should focus on to just help them refine their marketing strategy and see overall how their podcast is performing? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I actually don't have a love-hate relationship. I have a love relationship because I love data. I think it's great. I think we can use different data to leverage a lot of insights. So what are those? Kind of topics. What are things that we can see consistently that have higher downloads? What are people replaying, right? And we can see that in Apple Podcasts and not always on Spotify, depending on like where you are in which side of the world. But there's a ton of tools that allow you to see those. But really, like, what are people listening to in terms of topics? Not the episode titles per se, but more like what are
what's resonating with
what's
with
resonating,
audience, right?
exactly. And second, in terms of marketing, I think people don't think about this enough. Why do you think that episode got played? And going deep, not only about the metrics, but also like, is that something that you as a creator get excited about? Because I feel like when we get excited about a topic, not only do we market it better, we share it more. And sometimes when we're talking about topics where we have some imposter syndrome around, we're getting all in our feelings and we don't promote it as much because we're like, we really don't want people to listen. Yeah, exactly. So I definitely look into kind of like the topical things and also how was that process? And this is like another step, but sometimes like this week, for instance, last week was a crazy week in the news cycle. And so a lot of people were consuming a lot of other media and not necessarily podcasts, because there were a lot of like newsworthy stuff that was happening that kept people engaged. And they're like, okay, not only did this thing, what did this thing mean? And what will it mean for like moving forward? So we have limited time. So think about it as a creator. That week something happened that took people's focus away. And then in terms of like metrics. So look at downloads more as a percentage. So overall, did your numbers go up or down? And then more like, did it go up 5%? Did it go down 2%? If you're looking at on the episode level, what is the overall consumption? If a podcast episode has around 100%, more than 80% is good consumption. But if you're going on the 50, on the 30, you have to decrease the size of your podcast episodes. Or you can actually look at the episode itself and go, oh, there was a drop-off point here. What was it? Maybe you started like talking about random stuff. Maybe there was an ad. Maybe there was a loud noise on the episode that you didn't care to edit, and actually you should edit out because it ruins the listener experience. Yeah. So thinking about those, I think those are really important metrics to look at, but also thinking about what is your experience with a listener. And I don't think enough people think about how committed they are to the listener. So every single episode that I create because I want to create it, because my listeners are asking for it, or because I'm doing social listening and I know they care. They are seeking that topic and they seek my expertise on it. I want people to stop releasing content that is purely released because it's like fear-based. So their peer released an episode on this and they go, oh my God, I gotta release an episode on this because my peer said it. Oh, they got really popular. Maybe like it will bring me the downloads. It will bring me the fame, all the things. So really look at the things that are not bringing you joy. And if that correlates with the episode numbers or the drop-offs and they're not as big, it's probably a sign that you should look within and go like, what lights you up? Because that connects to the listener in ways that you don't realize, because you're like just doing it for the sake of like, oh, the status quo, it's going to bite you in the bum. So just a lot more than just like numbers is like, what does it mean? So yeah, I'd say that.
Love it. 2 questions before we land the plane. Yep. What would you say, looking ahead, what emerging trends would you say that you foresee like in the podcast marketing space happening, and how can podcasters prepare to kind of stay ahead of the game moving forward?
That is something that I always struggled sharing because it's kind of different from industry to industry. I think people looking ahead, the AI tools are going to continue to grow, right? So I think I'm seeing a trend in less content. Especially business owners are reducing the amount of shows per week that they're doing, or like per month. And so they're turning into, like, for instance, I turned my podcast into seasons because I had a ton of things that I needed, like a ton of projects, like business, big thinking that I needed. But so that's specific to me. But a lot of creators that I know, they're burning out. And so basically the rate at which they were releasing content pre-COVID, post-COVID, and if you like those 2 years after, it's starting to wane down because people have different habits. So I think it's okay for people to move into seasons. It's okay for people to move into content that is repurposed. Definitely a lot of more collaborations where you're sharing shows. For instance, let's say I want to use this interview because maybe like, oh, I want my audience to see a different side of me and I want to introduce them to you, Ozeal. So basically like repurposing the content, you're working smarter and not harder. So we're moving away from maximize, post 10 videos per day to post 1 video maybe every other day and spend time engaging one-on-one, so on that more like human level. So I think those like bird's eye like strategies are good for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely see that happen. I'm with you on that. If there's one creator factor, Ana, one creator factor that every creator should learn or master, what would that be?
Oh my God, that came so fast to me. So fast. So I'm looking in the camera right now. I'm talking slowly because I think this is so important.
Take your time.
Be okay with being you. and own all the different sides of who you are, because people connect to people, and marketing has never been easier. Never have we lived in a time where it's so easy to start and broadcast your message and connect to people all over the world, and to have minimal skills required to do so. So that is out the window, thinking that you need to be a super expert. Like, people are connecting to the journey of learning, to the journey of becoming. So as a host, as a business owner, really learn how to hone in your unique qualities, your unique self, to attract the people that you want to attract, and stop trying to pretend that you're someone else or you're further ahead.
Thepodcastspace.com. Check out the podcast space. Ana, it's been a little slice of heaven, my friend, to finally get you on the podcast, to talk podcasting with you. And I'm honored to call you a friend. I know we're neighbors, so I'm sure we'll be connecting sooner than later. And of course, I'm pretty sure I'll catch you at a podcast conference soon. And I'm just really excited. I'm really excited about your journey. I love that you bring a different vibe, a different type of energy. When I met you, I was like, there's something special about her. Aside from you just bring a different vibe. You just look different. You speak different. You think different. You take different. I think it's because of the fact that you've been in different parts of the country, and you just bring a different kind of flavor to the space. So I just want to let you know that it's refreshing from someone who's been in the space for quite some time, and I really respect and admire everything that you do as a content creator, my friend. So thank you for everything that you do, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you. I appreciate you.